Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Now What podcast. My name is Glenn Sharp. I am the president and CEO of Sharp Leadership Development. This is episode 14, and this is our final episode of the year 2025. We're finishing up a series on sales. So this is episode 3 of 3 in regards to sales training. But before we get started, if you haven't seen the podcast yet, it's based on the book Now What. It's a new book that I put out a couple of months ago. It's a great way to get your new managers off and running for 2026. It's based on the character Johnny. Johnny is a fantastic mechanic in the airline industry, and because he's such a great mechanic, they made him manager of mechanics. Now what? So Johnny doesn't have the skills necessary to be a manager. So it's a 4-month journey of me coaching Johnny on some of the necessary skill sets to be a great manager. One of those skill sets is sales. And a lot of people ask me, hey Glenn, I'm not a salesperson, and they have a negative view on sales. And one of the things I want you guys to kind of think about as we progress through this episode is you have to change the way you think in regards to that. You're always selling. And I'll get to that in just a few minutes. In episode 12, when we started off the series, we started off with really understanding the different personality types, different styles of individuals that you have in front of you. The basic premise behind this graph that I showed in episode 12 was, if you want to influence someone, who's more important, you or them? And the answer, of course, is them. And this is unbelievably important. I find most people with regards to sales don't understand that most of the selling is done in front of the customer. Now, obviously, you have to do your research. We'll talk all about that. You want to make sure you prep. We'll talk about all about that. But when you're in front of the customer, your ability to read and react to the customer is unbelievably important. Right? And that's where this comes in. Understanding who you have in front of you. Right? Do you have someone who's more my style, the controlling style, kind of no nonsense, get to the point, don't give me a bunch of sales rhetoric? Do you have somebody who's more in the supporting style, a people person? They want to talk about family. They want to talk about relationships. They want to kind of get to know you a little bit and size you up as an individual. Do you have someone in the analyzing style who's more detail? Right? They have to have the details. It's unbelievably important to them. Or do you have somebody in the promoting style who's high level, 30,000 foot view, futuristic? Right? You have to know who's in front of you. And it's just a simple way to remind you that people are different. Again, just like we talked about in episode 12, you are not going to sell the same way to each quadrant. For example, do not hit me with a cheeseball sales line like, Glenn, help me help you. It's not going to happen, not going to work. I'm not going to respond well to that. Just like someone in the analyzing style is not going to respond well if you're just talking in platitudes, talking in very general statements, generalities. They hate that. They want detail. They want to make sure that they have all their questions answered. So that was episode 12. That will dovetail nicely into what we're going to talk about today. And episode 13, if you recall, we did a lot of work on body language. Right? So body language is key. Remember what I mentioned in episode 13. It is a superpower. If you can read body language and react, you have a distinct advantage in the room, because the person that is exhibiting that behavior has no idea that they're doing it. They have no idea that they're touching their nose, or their eyes shift and their eyes dance when they're happy, or they broke eye contact because they didn't like what you were saying. Right? And if you pick up on those subtle cues, you can have a huge advantage in that room when you're selling your customers. But remember, there are rules to body language. So you just don't watch and see if somebody touches their nose. It's the 3 C's. So on the screen, you'll notice clusters, congruence, context, right? Multiple things have to be happening, right? It's in congruence with a tough question, and it's in the context of a sales meeting, or in the context of a board meeting, something along those lines. But multiple things need to be happening. And remember, it's a red flag, right? It's not an admission of innocence or guilt. It's not something that where you're like, aha, you touched your nose. No, it's just a red flag. It's an opportunity to probe, ask more questions, so that you can see whether or not you were correct in your assumption as to why they did that in terms of the body language. So for today, I want to introduce you to a new concept, and this is Pretty interesting. A lot of different concepts that we've covered in previous episodes are going to align, right? And the concept is pain points. If you notice, it's kind of a funny looking graphic on the screen. I want you to kind of focus on the two different areas, and then ultimately where we want to get to is the strike zone. So when it comes to selling, first and foremost, I want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that your mindset is correct. There's a lot of people that think, I don't want to be a cheeseball salesman. Listen, it's win-win or we don't do it. The great salespeople out there, they're not selling someone, right? I'm finding out what the customer's needs are, right? And what are their pain points right now? And then I'm aligning what product or service that I can provide them, right? If I can't provide them a product or service, then we don't do the deal, right? Then I'm just wasting their time, or I'm pushing a product or service onto them. That's the cheeseball sales people that I think people are very wary of and people don't want to become, right? But as I mentioned earlier, always selling, right? So we're going to start off with a fun example of pain points, and then we're going to transition into sales because this will demonstrate that you're always selling. Think of an interview, right? Now, no one that I know that does well in interviews just goes in unprepared. No, they do research on the company. They actually get on their website. They'll even visit a few stores if they're in retail or something along those lines, right? They think about the customer's needs, they do research, they think about exactly what the customer is going through, and then they align their skills. What skills can I bring to this job? What are some of the specific things that I could do to help you with the issues that you are encountering right now? And that funnel is the strike zone. You stick to that area where I can provide you a benefit. What's the benefit to you? Right? That's the strike zone, staying on that. And you do that by understanding the person's personality type, reading body language, doing lots of research on them. Let's get into sales though, right? So just like with the interview process, sales is the same exact way. Most of the work is done up front. Sound familiar? This is green line activity. This is the reason why salespeople are just amazing. Some individuals, they could sell anything to anyone, and it's because they've done all the work up front. They've done their research. Some of the salespeople I know have visited stores. Some of them will talk to employees. Some of them will literally do so much stuff up front that they are crazy prepared when they actually enter the room. And it's actually surprising to certain clients. Like, wow, you really know your homework. Yeah, I do. I've done a lot of research. So they already have some idea of what are some of the pain points of the customer through their research. However, they're listening intently. Right? So after they do their research, after they interview employees or visit stores and things like that, then one of the first things that great salespeople do is they ask questions. How can I help you? What are some of the things that are going on that I can help you with? That type of stuff. And they're listening intently. It's not just a question just to ask a question, just to break the ice. Right? You see this when you go buy a vehicle, for example. They ask you questions about your life. They ask you questions about what your needs are. What are you into? They're listening intently because they're going to use that to determine whether or not there's a product or service they can sell you and to stay in that strike zone. Right? So look and watch, right? And listen, right? Don't just ask the question just to ask the question in the beginning. So something so simple as, what can I help you with? Or what are some of the things that you're looking for here? They are garnering information. They're gathering it because they're going to use that later on. Right? So keep that in mind. That's what we're going for, that strike zone. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that they just go in and they don't do any research. They don't do anything. They don't have that mindset where it's win-win or we don't do it. And that's what pain points is all about. That's what selling is all about. But it's always focusing on the customer. Again, if you want to influence someone, who's more important, you or them? The answer is always them. Right? And that will get you a lot more yeses than nos. There's also a concept in selling called priming, right? And this is also a concept that I use in coaching all the time. So what's priming? Most of the information, right, is below the surface. In an iceberg, if you know anything about icebergs, the reason why the Titanic went down so quick is not because of what they could see above the waterline, it's because what was underneath the waterline. 90% of an iceberg's mass is below the waterline. It's unseen, and that's what ripped the hull to shreds. Well, it's the same thing with a client, with selling, right? 90% of what they think and feel is unsaid, and it's your job to get it out of them. Right? And you do that through everything that we've talked about so far. But one of the best ways to get to the under the water line is priming. So what's priming? Priming is they're not there yet. They're not getting there yet. They're not getting to what their real needs are, or they don't even understand what their real needs are. So you are going to take an educated guess. Right? You do that based on not dumb luck. You're not taking a wild stab at things. You are listening intently and you are making some assumptions, right? And so, for example, it wouldn't be a stretch for someone, in my line of work, leadership development. They bring me in and they start talking to me about their employees, and just through the words that they use and some of the body language, when it comes to certain topics, I say to them, "Are you having massive turnover problems?" Right now, that is not that much of a stretch, based on what I've seen and what I've heard. But all of a sudden they look at me like, yeah, right? And I'm like, well, what's going on exactly? Why do you think you're having turnover? And they'll give me some, a little bit of information. They'll give me some information, but I might look at them and say, when was the last time any of your managers have been trained? Have they ever been trained before? Like, either way, if they say yes or no, either way, I get below the waterline. All right. If I start talking about turnover, start talking about specifics, I start talking about things that they can relate to and they can feel in touch. And that's selling. When I start to get into the weeds with them, I start to push below that waterline, they start to open up to me. They start to realize that I know what I'm talking about, right? It's not just a stab in the dark. But what they don't realize is that I've done a lot of research on their company already, but that research is in the back burner until I talk to them, until I listen to them, and then that comes out. And I use that research to inform them and to be ready so that when I do prime, I'm ready with some examples. It's not the first time I've actually gone over it. I've actually gone over it in my head, and then when the opportunity arises, I actually explicitly say it to the client. Right? So, and that leads to things like upselling and cross-selling. Right? These are very, very basic sales concepts, but I can already, prior to my visit with the client, I can think of, hey, what are some of the things that I have that they don't even realize I have? I can give them better packages. I can give them products and services that they didn't even think of. Right? I can give something and add something to a specific product or service that they didn't even think of. Right? So that's really why that works, is because of the research I've done up front, but all the different techniques that I use in the room with the client. I want to challenge you guys, especially those of you that sell for a living. Right? There's a concept that I use, and I kind of stole it from baseball. Baseball, as you know, has a lot of different metrics. They used to call it sabermetrics. Now, if you go to a baseball game, it seems like there's a new metric, being shown on the board all the time. But the metric is WAR, wins above replacement. So the basic premise behind this is, why should I pay a third baseman $30 million a year if I can just grab somebody from AAA and insert them into that spot? How many wins am I going to get above, that person that came up from AAA? Wins above replacement. When it comes to sales, I want you to think about sales above replacement. And this is one of the things that I talk to my clients about. Do you know how to sell, or are you just someone who maintains the administrative piece to sales? Do you just have a couple of clients, and those clients are obviously revenue generators, cash cows, whatever you want to call it, and anyone could go into that spot? Or do you create sales from nothing, right? Sales above replacement. And that's what I want to challenge you guys with. When you think about your sales team, especially some of you sales managers out there, who do you have in front of you? Do you have glorified administrators out there, or do you have people who actually can sell? Right? Because that is a skill set, but it is, again, a win-win scenario. We never sell something to someone that they don't want. It's either win, win, or we don't do it. So keep that in mind. That's a little bit on the sales training. This is something that you practice. One of the things that I would consider if I were you guys, have somebody that you can role play with. And it's an informal role play. It doesn't have to be weird, right? But I always have people that will challenge me, will push me, and give me some ideas as to what to look out for, what are some of the holes in my argument. But remember the green line activity, right? That whether it's practice, whether it's research, whether it is visiting stores, whether it is figuring out what personality type the client is, most of the work is done up front. And that's the biggest aha moment for great salespeople, is they all have that in common. So I hope that helps you guys. As always, we're going to continue our podcast series and continue on management principles. Think about sales in terms of management. How do you sell your boss? How do you sell a peer? How do you sell your employees on different initiatives that you're trying to implement? In episode 15, in the new year, we're going to start off hitting the ground running. So a lot of you guys have to formulate plans in regards to how you are going to develop your people throughout the year. I'm going to introduce you to the employee planning worksheet as kind of an introduction to performance management, right? And then in the new year, you're going to see me on a lot of different podcasts. You're also going to experience some guests on the podcast. We're going to kind of pivot into real world situations and trying to solve some of these real world situations through some of the concepts that we've offered. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I look forward to the new year and providing lots of different podcast topics for you guys. I wish you guys all the luck in your leadership and management journey. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody has a blessed and healthy 2026. I will see you guys in episode 15.